here. Let me clear my throat here. There we go. Glad you guys didn't hear that. Whatever it was. Hey, everybody. I'm Nick Valencia, host of Nick Valencia Live. It's Thursday. What's today's date? February 19th. And this is the latest episode of Nick Valencia Live. Thank you so much for joining us here. And for those of you guys who were on the virtual press conference that we just wrapped up with Congressman Jimmy Gomez, of course, you guys are familiar with Congressman Gomez. I know a lot of you guys watch from Los Angeles, and so he is your representative. And what Congressman Gomez is working on right now is something that he talked about here when he was a first guest here several months ago. It was a bill that he was proposing that then didn't have any co-sponsors and now has dozens of them, called Housing Over Hate. And what it would do is effectively take that $175 billion slush fund that the president has appropriated for ICE and Border Patrol and reappropriate that into public housing. Affordable housing is a big issue here in the country. And you can make the argument that people here in America aren't really citizens, they're more commodities. And nothing really showcases that more than our housing market and our housing situation. Once you can't pay for where you live, you're out on the streets and you're just a product like everybody else here, especially when it comes to the immigration system. We see that happening time and time again. We have a big story coming up here. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but when those videos end, we never really understand what happens to people. We have a guest from a video that you guys saw back in December that was viral out of Elgin, Illinois. We'll get to that in just a second, but just to pick up where we left off here on Congressman Gomez, is anything going to be a silver bullet to solve what we're seeing out there on the streets? No, probably not. Are we going to stop tomorrow if this gets passed, or if ICE is disbanded? Are we going to stop seeing those violent arrests? We hope so. But so long as President Trump is in office, we know that nothing is straightforward. And we also know that they have more money right now, these agencies, these immigration agencies, than some of our branches of military. And that's scary stuff. And so Congressman Gomez is trying to do something about it. A lot of lawmakers, they're full of shit, man. They say a lot and they want to be comfortable and they don't want to upset the status quo in DC. Congressman Gomez seems to be trying to do something about it. And he is looking at us in new media and trying to sort of bring us into the fold. He sees the vision here and he sees that new media is a way that you guys get your information. We were just at the Knight Foundation in Miami for their conference. Places like Houston, it's one of the youngest cities in America. I think it is the youngest city in America, and people, majority of them there, get their news from YouTube, which explains why Houston is one of our top 5 cities. And so people like Congressman Jimmy Gomez and others in DC are seeing this runway and this vision that not just traditional media is important, but a way to reach people where they are and meet them where they are is through voices like us here and independent news. And so he asked us to join this virtual press conference, and he was also there with Representative Troy Carter from New Orleans. And the last thing I'll say about this is that it was really cool to see just the optics of Black and brown coming together, 2 leaders in our community. We know all too often, did I lose you, Eric? No. We know all too often that this country struggles from a disease of individualism, and you don't really think that it's your problem until it is. And so living in Atlanta around a community, this is like Black Mecca for African Americans, much like I equate it to what Latinos have in Los Angeles. And I just don't see the same kind of energy that I see in Los Angeles or in other areas that I do here in Atlanta. I didn't. Now I'm starting to see more and more. And even for the cynics out there, a step at a time is something, right? And you hope that that is sustained. You hope that people care through the next story and that they don't get distracted by some other big breaking news event. January was our biggest month here on Nick Valencia News, with more than 30 million views across platforms. And we talk about this all the time. The irony of news is that our success comes on people's worst days. The fact is that I guess that's not a fact. If things seem to be like they're going to get worse before they get better. I do believe, though, that this is a moment in time and that everything passes and that, there's nothing new under the sun and this too shall pass. But it takes people like us, independent journalists, to make sure that we get this on the record and that we're doing what we can so that future generations know what happened and that they don't have to take the same mistakes or make the same mistakes that we did and are right now. That potentially and hopefully there is another some despot out there or wannabe dictator out there who wants to use these levers that are available in our democracy and pull them for their supporters, because that's exactly what President Trump has done. These levers always existed. President Trump just pulled them for his supporters. That's what I think, and that's what we're seeing. And under President Trump and advisors like Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon, cruelty is the point. They want to put ICE agents out there in the polls. You have people like Nick Fuentes, who are further right even than Trump and his orbit, who are saying don't vote in the midterms because we want the Republican Party to collapse. There is so much happening right now in our society. And if you think it's moving fast, it's because it is. And it's because we're all in this digital space where people are kind of playing it fast and loose, right? What we're trying to do here is keep up with that speed of urgency, but also maintain traditional, just be rooted in the facts and go deeper and go behind the viral videos. Now is not a time to be neutral. Now is a time to be truthful. And that's one of the things that we talked about with our next guest. This is a pre-recorded interview, something that we filmed a couple of days ago, but we never see what happens to people after those viral videos end. Jesus Gutierrez is a man that you guys may know and may have seen before, even though you may not know who he is. He was the person in the viral video from Elgin, Illinois, where hundreds of people gathered around the balcony as ICE was descending on him. They eventually took him into custody, but it was a very dramatic scene. He joined us for a pre-recorded interview now from his home country in Venezuela, and he talked to us about the treatment that he was put through, what happened during that video, and what life is like now. Here it is. We're going to translate it, but we're going to do this interview initially in Spanish with Jesus Gutierrez. Many of you may have already seen video involving Jesus. He was the man on a balcony, the second floor balcony in Elgin, Illinois, in December. And there were hundreds of people that gathered outside of his home, and they were actually helping him as he was being targeted by immigration agents. Eventually, he was taken into custody and he was held in several detention facilities. He is now currently in Venezuela, and we are catching up with him now. Gracias, Jesús, por platicar con nosotros. ¿Cómo estás?
Bien, bien, gracias a Dios.
Queremos empezar. Si me puedes explicar lo que sucedió en diciembre, ¿qué pasó? ¿Qué estamos viendo en el video?
Bueno, no, que voy saliendo de mi casa y cuando veo que voy saliendo de mi casa se me pone un carro adelante y yo le esquivo, ¿verdad? Cuando le esquivo, ya él me pega a mi llanta derecha del lado del copiloto.
Ellos te pegaron.
Sí, ellos me pegaron, bueno. Y yo empiezo a darle un poquito al acelerador y ahí me meto a un estacionamiento de una iglesia, ¿verdad? Cuando me meto en el estacionamiento de la iglesia, viene otra vez el carro y me pega por atrás.
So Jesus is saying as he was driving away, he was hit on the right side of his vehicle by ICE. He tried to flee to a church. They followed him there, and then they hit him again there. ¿Qué pasó después cuando estabas en la iglesia? What happened after you got to the church?
Ahí ellos me pegaron por atrás, mi carro se me voltea y yo abro la puerta y me quito mi cinturón y salgo corriendo. Cuando salgo corriendo, ahí no sé qué pasó con el carro. Ayer vi un video que el carro negro chocó con un árbol. Yo no vi ese carro que chocó con un árbol, no vi.
So basically, as he was being chased, he had to leave his car. He went running. He still doesn't really know what happened to his car. He has heard and seen video or been told that there's video potentially of his car having crashed into a tree. He doesn't know that to be true, but he's going to tell us again what happened after that. Sigue, por favor.
Ok, y ahí bueno, y salgo corriendo. Cuando salgo corriendo, se me ponen muchos carros al lado, camionetas, me empiezan a gritar, cabrón, párate, cabrón, párate. Y yo lo único que le decía es que tenía miedo. No, tengo miedo, tengo miedo. Bueno, ya ahí salgo corriendo y veo unos apartamenticos que veo a un señor abajo y le digo, señor, ayúdeme, ayúdeme, hay migración. Y el señor cuando me mira todo asustado y que viene la gente corriendo atrás mío, el señor sale corriendo y yo salgo corriendo atrás del señor.
So Jesus was saying he started running. He saw an apartment complex, and after he saw the apartment complex, there was somebody outside, a man, who he approached, and he said, "Hey, look, ICE is after me. Please help me." he runs into the apartment complex, and at that point, he hides in there as he's being chased by cars and several what he believes was, and what we learned later were federal immigration agents.
Bueno, salgo corriendo con el señor, entramos a su casa, yo no me metí a la fuerza, yo no me metí a nada, el señor me dice, entra, yo entro, y ahí ya empiezo a llamar a mi novia, que me está persiguiendo ahí, y en menos de un minuto rodearon todo el condominio, todo, o sea, rodearon todo, y ya el señor y la señora ya como que se asustaron, y me dijeron no, que tenía que salir. Y bueno, y me salí a la terraza y ahí comenzó mi odisea, tantas horas ahí en el frío, me decían que me bajara porque iba a ser peor. Cuando me dijeron eso más me dio miedo, yo decía no, no me voy a bajar porque va a ser peor. La gente, gracias a Dios, la comunidad me empezó a ayudar, me empezó a apoyar. Y bueno, pasé hambre, no podía orinar porque estaba ahí arriba con el frío y había mucho frío y no me quisieron ayudar. O sea, la gente, lo de ahí me decía, no, que te pasamos cobija o quieres comida, pero no acepté nada porque yo sé con qué intención venían.
So he says he wants to make one thing clear is that he did not break an entry there at all. He was invited in by the man outside, and he eventually went inside a facility. He got up to the second floor. The woman there became nervous as the apartment complex realized what was happening. They gathered outside because the woman whose home he was in was nervous about his presence. He went outside onto the balcony, and it was there that we all saw basically this now viral video where the community was trying to help him, giving him supplies. He says he was out there in the cold. He couldn't go to the bathroom, and it was hours basically that passed as he was out there. He did say that ICE was offering him potentially a blanket or food. He didn't trust their intentions, and so he didn't accept that. Cuando estabas ahí afuera, viste la comunidad alrededando, no sé cómo decirlo en español, pero estaban ahí apoyándote afuera. ¿Cómo se sentía aún mismo ver la comunidad echándote la mano? What was it like to see the community there trying to help you out and support you?
No, cuando salí y vi esa comunidad, uy, o sea, me dio mucha fuerza, empecé a orar. Sí, tenía muchas ganas todavía quedarme en ese país, pero ajá, no se pudo. ¿Y qué? Tenía mucho miedo porque ya yo tenía a compañeros que habían pasado por lo que pasé y era muy feo. Pero cuando vi esa comunidad, me dio mucha fuerza, me dio mucha paz. Ya me encantó ver esa comunidad tan bonita de Elgin porque nunca me dejó solo. Y ahorita que estoy aquí en mi país, o sea, todavía están pendientes mío, me han apoyado siempre y estoy contento por eso, por la comunidad de Elgin.
He said he is so happy with how the community of Elgin stepped up for him and that he was never alone up there, even though he was going through one of the worst moments of his life, that the community stepped up and that, yes, he was in fear, but just to look out and see from the balcony the community rallying around him, supporting him, that gave him a lot of, sort of encouragement that he was being supported by the community. And he's still receiving that support now even though he's in Venezuela. Jesús, te agarraron y luego, ¿qué pasó después que te agarraron? Luego, ¿qué pasó? Where did they take you? What happened after you were eventually detained?
Bueno, ahí me agarraron, ya ahí me jalaron, me tiraron al piso y ahí me dieron un golpe con el piso en el cachete. O sea, esto lo tenía todo roto.
He said he was hit in the cheek, he was assaulted, and he had all of his right side of his cheek red from the injury after he was taken into custody.
Bueno, ahí me montan en un carro, en una camioneta Mazda, me llevan esposado y me empezaron un señor ahí no sé si era de ahí, no sé, porque me dio, no, aquí te vamos a llevar y te vamos a subir a otro carro, porque nosotros somos de seguridad, no me acuerdo el nombre, de seguridad nacional, no sé, algo así.
He said it was very confusing at first. He was put into one car, and then transferred almost immediately into another car because there were several agencies that appeared working hand in hand in coordination.
Bueno, llegamos a una escuela, ahí duré como 2, 3 minutos. El señor que me dijo de Seguridad Nacional me dijo que si mi nombre era Héctor Luis.
So he got there and he was transferred to a school, and then they started asking him his identity. It wasn't, they didn't know exactly who he was, and they were trying to confirm if he was the person that they were going after.
Claro, y yo le dije que yo no era Héctor Luis, que yo soy Luis Jesús. No sé si era para sacar mi información, no sé, pero
They asked for a Hector Luis, but his name is Luis Jesus. So he said he wasn't even certain at that point if they were going after him or if they had gotten somebody else that they were targeting.
bueno, ahí me dijo, bueno, ya ahorita viene la gente de ICE para que ya comience tu proceso.
And so at that point, another agent of ICE came and they started processing him anyway.
Ya, perdón, ya ahí me montaron en una gran Cherokee marrón y de ahí ya fui al centro de detención.
And then from there, from one Mazda, he was put in a Jeep Grand Cherokee and taken to the detention center. Usted, el tratamiento cuando estabas ahí bajo de custodia, ¿cómo te trataron? ¿Te dieron de comer? Hemos escuchado muchos ejemplos que no tienen derechos humanos, gente que están bajo de custodia. We have heard so many stories about people having their human rights violated from not getting proper food, just terrible conditions. Tell me about the conditions you were held in.
Bueno, a través de la comida, no. No hay derechos humanos, los guardias eran malos, lo de la comida también, a veces pasábamos hasta 8 o 9 horas sin comer.
So sometimes he would go 8, 9 hours, and he said, as far as nutrition, the food was barely food at all, and he would go up to 8 to 9 hours without food, and the conditions that he was held in were just miserable. ¿Me puedes dar detalles o un ejemplo sobre lo más malo que fue en tu experiencia? Can you give me an example, or maybe an example of how bad it was there inside?
Lo más malo de mi experiencia fue lo de la comida, yo sufro de mi vesícula, lo de la medicina fue horrible. Mi encierro también fue horrible porque nunca había estado encerrado, no tengo delito, no tengo crímenes para hacer esa injusticia conmigo.
He says he's never been in trouble with the law. He doesn't have a criminal record. He's never been in custody before. So it wasn't just the food that was an issue. It was just psychologically being in custody, knowing that he wasn't a criminal, but he was being held and treated like one anyway. Había muchos tipos similares, mucha gente, muchos hombres que no tenían, no eran criminales. Explícame de la gente, tus colegas o tus amigos ahí adentro. What was it like, your peers that were there inside? Were they also not criminals? Tell me a little bit about who you were inside with.
Sí, había muchas personas que no tenían ningún crimen, ningún delito como yo, o sea, no teníamos ningún crimen ni delito, ni un DUI, ni una multa, o sea, nada. Había gente hasta que tenían ya por cumplirse su residencia y también la tenían ahí injustamente, porque ahí está agarrando a todo el mundo, sin delito, con delito, como sea.
He said they're going after everyone, and there was people inside, many of them who had no criminal records, just like him, not a DUI. They didn't even have a ticket. I mean, they'd say things like they don't even have a jaywalking ticket. They've never been in trouble in their lives, and that's the majority of the people that he was around. Y el tratamiento, te trataron como criminales te dijeron groserías. I mean, explícame un poquito más del tratamiento, because we've heard a lot of things about guards speaking negatively and condescendingly to inmates. Tell me a little bit more about the treatment that you experienced.
Sí, ya solamente con el simple hecho de meterme en una cárcel, sí, nos trataban mal porque le decíamos a los guardias de seguridad de ahí que nos ayudaran, o sea, con las medicinas, con los medicamentos, con la comida y eso, y nos decían que no, o sea, eran como racistas. Había muchas personas racistas ahí por los latinos, había muchas personas racistas, pero uno no podía hacer nada ahí porque ellos eran los que mandaban ahí y nada, a veces nos encerraban injustamente, a veces durábamos hasta 2 días sin salir, sin bañarnos, sin cepillarnos, porque no nos querían dejar salir por simple hecho por ser latino.
He said there was so much racism that he experienced there, racism against Latinos, that he would go up to 2 days without showering. He couldn't even comb his hair. And it was shocking to him to just see how much persecution and racism there was against Latinos. He also said, and I failed to mention in his last answer, that getting medicine or even just getting basic medical care was difficult. And we've also heard that from other people in previous interviews. Jesús, ahora estás en Venezuela, ya has regresado a tu país. ¿Has pensado en tus experiencias y qué piensas en lo que fuiste, la persecución, la experiencia de esto? ¿Me puedes explicar cómo te ha afectado aún mismo? Can you tell me how it's affected you psychologically? You're now back in Venezuela. Just thinking about the treatment that you've been through in the United States, if you could just tell me, can you believe it?
Bueno, sobre mi experiencia en Estados Unidos fue difícil. Tengo problemas, ahorita tengo problemas psicológicos porque lo que me pasó fue feo, lo que viví en esa cárcel fue feo. Como les digo, nunca había estado encerrado ni en mi país, no tengo ningún crimen ni en mi país, no tengo ningún delito. Bueno, gracias a Dios ahorita llegué a mi país, estoy tranquilo, pero psicológicamente sí me ha afectado mucho lo que viví en ese encierro.
He said physically he's okay, but psychologically he's not doing well. And he wants to reiterate that he's never even been in trouble in his own country. He's never had a ticket. He's never gotten in trouble in his life. And so to have gone through that experience as a person who, we say this all the time, is moving in good faith and yet was treated, was incarcerated, and then deported, that he's having some trouble processing. And we could certainly understand that. Jesús, gracias. Estamos muy agradecidos por tu tiempo y sé que es difícil uh, describir lo que viviste. Sé que es mucho y es muy pesado, es como una pesadilla en realidad. Por eso te quiero decir, estamos muy agradecidos por platicar con nosotros. ¿Hay algo que no te he preguntado que es importante saber o algo que quieres hablar? Ahora es tu chance. Thank you, Jesus, so much. We know that it's very difficult to relive these experiences. It's very difficult to recount these stories. So we're very grateful for your time. Is there anything that I haven't asked you or anything that you would like us to know? Now's your chance.
Bueno, ahorita lo que quiero decir es que por favor ayuden a esa gente trabajadora, la gente que no tiene delito, la gente que tiene familia allá, que lo están agarrando injustamente. Hay personas que tienen más de 10 años, 20 años en ese país y no tienen ningún delito criminal y lo está metiendo a todos por iguales. Y también quiero agradecer a mi comunidad de Elgin, que gracias a Dios ellos me dieron mucha fuerza, mucha fortaleza, mucha paz. Le quiero agradecer a mi abogado Ross, que fue maravilloso conocer a esa persona, por haberme apoyado, por haberme ido a ver en esa cárcel tan fea. Y bueno, y a ustedes también les agradezco por hacerme la entrevista y de corazón que sí quiero que ayuden a esas personas que estaban como yo también.
He wants us to do anything that we can to help out those that have been in this country and are working to add value to this country. There are people that have been here for 10, 20 years and have never been in trouble, just like him. And those are the kinds of people that are being detained. Anyone is being detained right now. It's not just the violent criminals. And Jesus Luis is an example of that. And he wants to reiterate that to the audience. Do anything that you can to help out those that are moving here in good faith and have never, ever been in trouble. He also wants to reiterate his gratitude towards the community of Elgin, who has really never let him be alone throughout all this, and also to his attorney, Rob Held, who he's so grateful to have met and who is really doing an excellent job as his attorney. José Luis, gracias y ojalá que platicamos diferentes circunstancias y que sigues en la lucha porque estamos aquí apoyándote también. Hopefully keep up the fight. We're here to have your back as well. Gracias, brother.
Muchas gracias, gracias, bye.
And gracias otra vez a Jesus Gutierrez. That was my first time doing a live bilingual interview here. So I hope you guys thought that was consumable. Thank you also to Eric for cutting that up and making it a lot more digestible here, cutting out those awkward moments, I guess. One of the things that we talked about in this next clip that I'm going to show you here and that Jesus talked about is just the loss of dignity. It's something that I've seen a lot in the years that I've covered migrants and the border. It's something that I saw really blatantly in a migrant refugee camp in Matamoros, Mexico during the Return to Mexico policy. And I'll never forget an elderly woman, and she wasn't too old, but she was a senora, and she was washing her clothes in the same filthy, dirty Rio Grande water that they were bathing in and getting sick from. And I asked her, what are you doing here? Why are you washing your clothes in this dirty water? And I remember her telling me, what are we supposed to do? We have to have some sort of dignity, don't we? And it was just her process of trying to train her mind or psychologically believe that she wasn't in a terrible situation that she was in. And, dignity is something that is lost and something that we don't talk about enough with when it comes to immigration. Something that I didn't even consider is what Liam's father was going through and what Representative Joaquin Castro told us when we visited him in his office in Washington, D.C., is that, we all know, for those parents of us out there, that we don't get scared. Kids don't get scared until their parents get scared, right? And what I don't think I really thought about was what Liam was seeing and having what Liam was seeing and having his dad just bossed around inside ICE custody. The authority figure there that he looked up to for his 5 years of life is now all of a sudden diminished to mandatos and answering commands from people that don't give a shit about them or their lives. I don't know. I can't say that, with full confidence, because we have heard stories as well that some of these corrections officers and guards are reluctant to be there. We heard that from Angela De La Valle, whose husband, Carlos De La Valle, has been in custody since mid-August and transferred to 16 different facilities. It's just crazy. And the loss of dignity is, one of the things that we don't talk about enough. But in this interview here, it's something that we focused on with Representative Joaquin Castro. We caught up with him about a week after he left the Dili Detention Center, which is where 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos was held. And it was clear, and you'll see it too in this interview, that Representative Castro saw some things that he wish he hadn't.
Struggling as a parent, trying to deal with this and be a journalist, and also know that I'm trying to protect the innocence of my children.
We're in the nation's capital to meet with Representative Joaquin Castro to talk about life, children, and what he did to get Liam Conejo Ramos out of custody. The first time that you saw Liam's eyes and that you looked in his eyes, what was that like as a dad?
That first time that I was there, I didn't even get to look in his eyes. That picture that you see,
when he's in his dad's arms,
he was like that the whole time. He never woke up. As a parent, it's very hard to see parents in that situation, because to your kids when they're young, you're almost like a superhero. It almost feels like that mirage has been lost to their kids. That their kids realize that they aren't all powerful, that they can't always provide protection, that they're not Superman or Superwoman. And for the parents, like a painful loss of dignity in front of their kids.
I didn't even think about that. It's like you have like an authority
human,
figure.
yeah. We also got just a huge batch of letters from Dili when we left.
That people sent with you?
That they sent with us, and most of them were in Spanish, so we went through all of them, translated them, everything, and in those letters is an allegation of sexual assault of one of the kids that we're now gonna forward for investigation. I think they were all traumatized, but some of them were stone-faced, and some of them were sobbing. There's a 2-year-old girl who kept coming up to me and just hugging my leg. She was really small, asking us to get her out of there. A baby that's 2 months old living in that trailer prison, to me at the time when I went through there, was the most shocking.
I'm really struggling as a parent, trying to deal with this and be a journalist, and also know that I'm trying to protect the innocence of my children.
My kids are 12 and 10, and then we have a 3.5-year-old. I've just always told them that I'm trying to do good in the world. I think ICE should be disbanded. It has outlived any purpose as an immigration enforcement agency that does it right. It's stamped upon every immigrant this impression that, hey, you're probably a violent criminal.
Yeah.
You're probably dangerous to people here in the United States. You're probably out to hurt people. And that's how a big chunk of the country looks at a lot of these folks, even to the point of dehumanizing somebody so much that when you hear that a 2-month-old baby's in there, there's some Americans, because they've been fed all this stuff over the years, that are okay with that. But when the whole nation, most of the nation speaks up and rejects this politics of bigotry and fear, I think it's harder. I think that's more powerful.
When 180,000 people are calling to say, get Liam out, right?
That's right, yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
180,000 people calling for one boy, and there are so many others, hundreds and hundreds of other kids that are still in detention right now. And we're trying to advocate for people to keep that same energy with everyone. And it's so important what we're doing, because if there wasn't a photo of Liam, do you think people would really care as much as they did? If there wasn't that photo of him looking sad, being taken into custody with his Spider-Man backpack and his blue beanie, those images really did something to a lot of people, to galvanize a lot of people. And I mentioned those hundreds of other children that are in custody. Lydia Terrazas is a journalist who has been just crushing it, man. She is not giving up. She is relentlessly pursuing this story of children in custody. You heard Representative Castro talk about a 2-month-old living inside these trailer prisons. The 2-year-old has a name. The 2-year-old is Juan Nicolas, and we learned that name after leaving the office of Representative Castro. And in the last week, if you've been following this story, according to reports, this 2-month-old and his mother were told that they had a foster family, essentially, that was going to take them in and help them. They were lied to, according to reports, by federal agents who lured them basically into self-deporting. And according to Lydia Terrazas, those individuals, the mother and Juan Nicolas, a 2-month-old, are currently in Mexico. They're originally from Guatemala, but they're now in a country that's not their home. And they were sent across the border by, again, agents who lied to them and deceived them into self-deporting, according to reports. We do want to encourage you to go check out what Lydia Terrazas is doing. She is a phenomenal journalist. I don't know her very well, but I've been following her work, and I think she is doing just exactly what needs to be done as a journalist. Is what we did in legacy media was drive-by news, man. We focused on a story and then we forgot about it, and we moved on to the next shiny object. And what we're doing here, and what people like Lydia and other independent journalists are doing, is saying a lot about a little and not forgetting a story, reminding you, because that's our job. We've talked a lot about Liam, but look at this 2-month-old, Juan Nicolas. Look at all these other children who have names as well, who we don't know their names as well, but they're out there in the same conditions. And so it was so important for us to showcase that story that we did with Representative Castro to, really emphasize and underscore the loss of dignity for these families. And it's nothing new. This is something that we have seen in history. And we are not going to be able to give you this interview this time, but when I was in that pre-recorded interview with Jesus Gutierrez, I was on the phone with Toni Takahashi, and she is a survivor of Japanese American internment camps, a very ugly part of our history in the United States, but one that is very similar to what we are seeing right now, at least even according to the survivors. Now, Toni was 3 years old when she was put in an internment camp with her mother and her father and her siblings. Her siblings were psychologically damaged by the experience. They were older. And in full disclosure, her youngest sibling is a family friend of ours. So this is how I know the story. I know it to be true. And we wanted to bring that to you. Toni's a little older. She is having some technical problems. She was having some trouble clicking the link on her phone. We're going to work through all of that with her so we could bring you that story, because I think it is so important for us to be the people that help remind you about what happened in the history of this country. This is part of the reason that I love having Eric with me, is because he is a student of history, and he is somebody who really understands what has happened before and how we got here today. And what has happened before in this country is that Japanese Americans during World War II were basically put in the equivalent of concentration camps. And they were interned in America on US soil, and they were treated like animals. I'm sure Eric can tell me how it all ended, but eventually it did all end. And Japanese Americans were given remittances for the experience that they were put through by our federal government. This was a policy. This was a matter of law that Japanese Americans in this country were put through those experiences. And I am sure if you polled people back then, there was people that were as ugly as it is now and easy to say that it is wrong now. I'm sure that there were people who were saying, It's right. We should, yes, these Japanese Americans, we have no idea who they are. They could be spies for the Japanese, and we have to do this, and this is the law. Legality is not morality, and we continue to tell you guys that here. I know that there are people that criticize what we do and think that what we do is wrong, but I am so morally clear about what we're doing that I am okay to wade through these waters filled with people hating on us, to take my family off the internet because people want to hurt us or do wrong to us. It is important for us to step up because sooner or later, every single individual in this country is going to have to step up in their own way. And that's, I think, probably what it's going to take because we suffer from this disease of individualism. Thank you guys for watching here. Eric, is there anything else that we should talk about? Anything else that we should mention? No? Okay. Yeah, you saw those regular people stand up for Jesus. Thank you, Eric, for saying that. You saw the community stand up for Jesus Gutierrez. You saw state lawmakers out there. You saw community organizers, kids out there with their parents. That's what we need right now, man. That's what we need. For the look ahead, if we're planning ahead, guys, it's going to be a very, very busy February and March. I am on the road again, back on the road, starting on Saturday, right? Day after tomorrow. I'm flying in with Rob Held, the attorney for the man that you just heard from, Jesus Gutierrez, who is flying me from Atlanta to El Paso to pick up stories there on the border. Rob Held put out an all-call that you might have seen on his social media saying that he has a private jet and he is willing to transport people there. Tier 1 is people who are dealing with this deportation, directly impacted. Tier 2, clergy, independent journalists. Tier 3, other lawyers. I sent him a message. He said, when can I pick you up? And this is the kind of things that are happening to us, people stepping up and offering us support so we can be of service to you guys. And so on Saturday, I'll be landing in El Paso, where one of the first stories I'll do will be on Walmart quietly building the surveillance state here that is being used by ICE. I don't want to give away too much of our reporting. We have a report coming out and we're waiting right now. Walmart's on the clock. I heard from them last night, but they are supposed to give me a statement by the end of business today. Big breaking news exclusive that you'll see here only on Nick Valencia News. We'll put it out this weekend. So I'll be going to Walmart, the same Walmart there on Gateway where the racist mass shooting happened, where that man was targeting Latinos in 2019, killing 23 people and injuring dozens others. And there are other stories that we're going to pick up there because we never hear what's going on the border. Border Patrol isn't even on the border, man. They're in our American cities and they're not on the border, it seems. So I'm going to go down there, return to kind of effectively my roots here and reporting roots and go down there and see what other stories we can pick up. We have talked to some people there, have some ideas about what we're going to do. We're going to be going into Segundo Barrio, which is the oldest part of El Paso, right there on the border, U.S.-Mexico border, where you always see migrants walking across those open fields. Hoping we're going to talk to some people. We will and get some good food as well. Yeah, exactly, Eric. We're going to get some good food here. Additionally, we are shout out to L&J Cafe, by the way, L&J Cafe. I'm accepting advertisements and sponsorships if you want. But we are, after El Paso, going to be flying to Mexico City, where on February 25th, we will be part of a Reuters symposium on new media, talking about our role here and what we're doing with independent media. In March, I'll be back in Los Angeles, where I reached out to Memo Torres yesterday. Memo, if you're watching this, or anyone in LA Taco, I'm trying to do an in-person event. We want to coordinate an in-person event. Eric and I are working together on putting together people in person, because as the internet becomes more and more full of shit and bots, and as what we see, we're told is not real, sometimes it is real and we don't know what to decipher. I think the currency, the true currency of new media is going to be being able to get people actually physically together in a room. That's real. You know, what we're doing here is real. So we're going to try to put an in-person event together in Los Angeles so we can meet some of you guys. We can meet some of you and talk to you guys, and you could introduce yourselves to our network, and, you know, we could build and grow from there, because the only thing stronger than fear is hope and fellowship and community. And that's what we hope to do. So some busy things coming up on the agenda and the calendar, but we are still out there, and we're going to get back out there on the road. Enough talking about ourselves, man. Enough doing these fucking conferences and shit. We need to get back to reporting. That is what we're here for. That's what you guys need. You guys need truth. You don't need neutrality. You need honesty. And that is what we give here. And that's why we say, help us make truth go viral. And remember, guys, we still got the swag out there. These shirts are selling. We still got some shirts. They're comfortable. They're so soft. That's all I got to say. Today was a good show. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for sticking around. As always, thank you for helping us make truth go viral. Thank you to my wife. Thank you to my executive producer, Eric. And thank you guys to all of you. Hope you guys have a great day on purpose.